Hi, it's Hills Carmichael from Resilience Central. And I thought what would be really, really cool to do would be to have a chat with someone who is a medical herbalist and an authority in this area. And this is my really good friend, Martin Schoenbeck. Hello, Martin.
Hello.
And the reason why we're doing this is because some people would like to have an alternative to just going to the doctor and being prescribed something. And Martin has, I guess we both have alternatives in as much as people think that, who can I go to? I have to go to the NHS and there's nothing else that I can do. But there are some substantial alternatives, aren't there?
There are indeed, yes.
Oh, well, we were just having a chat about, what's hit everybody this year has been the awful cold that people have been having.
Yes, we've seen a lot of patients this year with very bad colds and flus and coughs that have continued on and on for weeks. They've tried antibiotics, they've not really had much success, and then they've been left with symptoms that have carried on. And the key thing is fatigue. That's the word you hear again and again. People are absolutely drained and exhausted. We would term it post-viral fatigue syndrome, and herbs really come into their own to treat that. And any lingering coughs and bronchitis, that type of stuff that's left after a cold, we can treat quite successfully with herbal medicine.
So from my perspective, people get to feel that they feel really, really down. It has an impact on their performance, on their focus, and actually, if they're quite anxious about something, then that can actually have a low-lying effect on them as well. And of course that has an impact on what they do at work. And maybe, have you heard that expression presenteeism, which is when you're at work and yet you're not at work because you're so bloody poorly or something like that. Have you come across that one? Obviously not.
Not really. No, I'm looking dazed. Something that sprung into my mind though was about anxiety. Obviously in herbal medicine, it's that also something we treat quite a lot, and that feeds into all sorts of other symptoms. If somebody's constantly anxious, it can lead into depression. That's a classic.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely.
Line of progression. But anxiety also links into other physiological symptoms like IBS, which again we can treat symptomatically with herbs, but we would treat holistically. So we have herbs that can help reduce anxiety. So that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And where we're actually situated is we're actually within Martin's clinic, and all of these wonderful bottles that are around. These are tinctures.
Tinctures, that's right. They're based on alcohol. The reason we use alcoholic tinctures is because it preserves the active constituents in the medicine almost indefinitely. Shelf life's probably around 5 years for most herbs, but actually the efficacy lasts longer than that. So if you use dried herbs, it only has around a 6-month shelf life. So most herbalists that practice use tinctures to preserve the medicines. And the other reason we use tinctures is because we...
Excuse me.
Looks like you might need some of my...
it looks like it. Help me, please.
The other reason we use
wouldn't be the
tinctures
first time, wouldn't be the last time.
Yeah, we can blend stuff together nicely. We can mix. The average patient probably gets from me between 5 to maximum maybe 9 herbs in a blend, which we tailor to the individual. So no two patients go out with exactly the same prescription. And of course, being liquids, we can blend that together really easily, much more easily than you could do if you were manufacturing capsules from dried herbs.
So, do you know, that just occurs to me. My father takes a certain amount of medication, but if you had somebody who had masses of medication or lots of different conditions, I don't want to get in the way of medical stuff, which is the NHS predominantly. But actually, I suppose one of the advantages of being a medical herbalist is that you just take the one tincture because you...
Exactly. We can put a lot of stuff into one bottle that treats a range of conditions. But then, talking back about the NHS and orthodox medicine, we're trained in our degree to know about dangerous interactions. I mean, the one everybody's aware of, obviously, is St. John's wort, which interacts with all kinds of things like warfarin,
Sunlight?
Sunlight, yes, it's
Contraindicate with that as well?
exactly. Yeah, it is. It can make you photosensitive, but there's a lot of herbs that might not be recommended to have with certain drugs, and we're trained in knowing about those contraindications and interactions, probably more than your GP would know actually. So. Yeah, so that's it is why I think it's important to consult a qualified herbalist before taking. People think, oh, it's natural medicine, it's harmless, it's benign, but in fact, herbs can be very potent, and if they're used incorrectly, there are risks if you mix it with orthodox medicine.
Yeah. So just before we shot this, I was speaking to Martin, and we were just talking about it was about licorice, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I stupidly said, much to his amusement, okay, so licorice is used for.
Licorice is an adaptogen, so it's used in herbal medicine. We have a range of uses for it, but it's to help with energy. An
adaptogen. See, that's a word.
That's
there.
A new
adaptogen.
word. Pills has learnt today. Yeah, there's a whole range of herbs which are adaptogens, so they help you adapt to stress and change that's going on. Licorice falls into that category. It's very useful for treating also things like stomach ulcers.
Okay.
There's been research for it working against the Helicobacter bacteria, which is responsible for stomach ulcers.
Colonising that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's good. It's good for that, but it's contraindicated in people with high blood pressure. So if you have high blood pressure, you shouldn't be eating licorice. But what we were joking about was you were saying about licorice that you buy in the shops, so the black sweet.
Yes.
And I said, well, actually, that's 99% sugar.
Sugar. Yeah.
It's not really got much licorice extract in it. Proper licorice is like the sticks that old people used to chew years ago.
Yeah. I remember doing that.
Yeah.
That makes me an old people.
So yeah, and we make the tincture from the wood. It's soaked and tinctured up that way into alcohol, which is then medicinal. So it's quite different from the black sweets you buy in the shop. Quite
different, and the conversation about sugar is completely different as well, isn't it? Because sugar is it's a stimulant. When I see people, one of the things that I'm interested in is how much caffeine are they taking, and what kind of stimulants are they taking in terms of actually it could be recreational stimulants, but it could also be actually alcohol that sort of figures into it, and lots and lots of sugar. Is just apart from the diabetic risk as well.
I was just going to say one of my interests, which is what I became well known for when I was studying at university, was metabolic syndrome, or otherwise known as Syndrome X, which is a real buzzword at the moment, because obviously metabolic syndrome is the precursor to type 2 diabetes, and with the obesity epidemic. A lot of people are suffering now with this metabolic syndrome. And a syndrome is a cluster of symptoms, so it would be elevated blood pressure, elevated blood lipids, so high cholesterol, central obesity, and also fatigue. So that there's a crossover. So people who have this metabolic syndrome, it's not yet registering as type 2 diabetes, but it is already impacting on their life,
and the warnings are already there.
And the warning signs are already there. Exactly. Yeah. The good news is it's entirely reversible, and again there are lots of herbs that can help improve sugar metabolism and insulin resistance, or reduce insulin resistance. But I would always advocate using herbs in conjunction with a change of diet, increasing exercise, doing all of those other things. It's not a magic cure to just
do what you like.
Eat what you like, and take some herbs. That would be great, wouldn't it?
A bit of a quick fix, wouldn't it? Really. So, from my world, stress is a massive thing, and actually our ability to prepare for stressors, respond to them whilst they're going on, and then recover from them is. If you can manage to do that, then mentally you've got the mindset for it, but there are some other things that you can do within your life and your lifestyle just to optimise that and really fine tune it so that you can get the best out of everything. And I think for I think for me, I'm sort of coming away from artificial stuff, and I'm looking more to natural stuff. And if I can, apart from anything else, trying to go to the bloody doctor. You know what it's like. You got to phone up
Yes.
at least a century in advance before you can manage to get an
Or hit
appointment.
redial at 8 o'clock in the morning and tell them
Constant,
you're
on
an
two
emergency.
phones. On two phones. Have you done that?
Yeah.
I've done it that way.
Yeah.
And actually, to use something that is natural and fits in naturally with your body, and actually somebody who has the skills. I mean, what really amazed me was when I have been prescribed by yourself. So there's no worries about client confidentiality there because I'm disclosing it. But the whole thing was, you took my pulse and you could tell the character of my pulse.
Yeah.
It was very funny. I don't mean it that way,
Yeah.
but you could tell the nature of it, which is like that's kind of like mind blowing because
Well,
the expertise of that.
we learn all this stuff on the degree course, and it is a really thorough program. I've got a friend, quite a good friend who's a GP, retired, who studied then the herbal medicine degree, and it was really interesting because he said the herbal medicine degree was actually harder than the degree in medicine he studied all those years ago. And that made me think, wow, God, we managed to get through that and survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was quite refreshing to hear. But coming back to your conversation about stress, stress is something that we treat quite widely with herbal medicine, and it comes into its own there. We often have a thing that comes into the clinic with patients. They present with what's called adrenal fatigue. I don't know if you've come across that.
Yeah.
And there are herbs that can readdress it. So one of the classic ones is Borage officinalis, or borage. And this goes back. I mean, there's a history of borage being used for stress. They used it in the First World War. They said borage gives you courage, and of course these guys were stressed to pieces, in the Somme, going over the top in the trenches, etc. And they used to drink borage tea, believe it or not, because they had this adrenal fatigue. They were so exhausted, and borage just gave them that power to be able to carry on. So that shows you an old traditional use. And even now, when we find people have come in and they have this adrenal fatigue, borage is one of the herbs that we can use to readdress that.
So, are there any things you because Martin's based in Lincoln, and again we've discussed this, and it's probably preferable to see somebody face to face.
It always is if you can,
and then possibly follow up with Skype. But you've had people who come from as far as well. I know that people have come from London to see you, and also from Derbyshire as well.
Yeah.
If somebody couldn't get to see you. Are there any alternatives they might want to take, or they might be able to take? Because we have that firm on the high street.
Yes. So you can read up about herbal medicine. There's lots of resources available online for self-medicating. But it's an incredibly complicated area of science. In fact, I wouldn't suggest that you try to self-medicate with complicated illnesses and conditions. It's better to get professional advice.
Yeah. Okay. So I was getting the stall there, whilst he was thinking quickly around that. But absolutely, you're absolutely right, because we've only got one life, really. Irrespective of what your belief system is, and it's best to make the most of what you've got. And I think for me, one of the things I've always done, having had serious diagnosis, and that is to go to take advice, because all medical advice that's exactly what it is. It's advice. So if you've got something that's wrong with you, to my mind, one of the worst things you can do is just accept that. This is all there is. I mean, I was watching a film a little while ago called, it's going to slip my mind now, Forks Over Knives. And there was a woman who was sent away with a heart condition, and her doctor had just said, well, there's nothing more we can do for you, so you might as well just go away and die.
Yeah.
18 years later, when another doctor took her on and changed the diet, made a whole load of different changes, she was still going and speaking extremely highly of what had happened to her, with the exception of the, go away and die. But there's, advice, take advice from as many sources as you possibly can, because someone somewhere may have something that will help. I think. Is there anything you could add to that?
Yes, I agree. I mean, it's unfortunately everybody's corralled into the NHS. It's like the NHS is this wonderful organisation that has all the answers, all the cures, but in fact, there are a whole lot of other paradigms for treating illness out there, and I think it is a great shame that they're not available on the NHS. Unfortunately, that's the system that we have. Other countries are a lot more open in embracing complementary or alternative medicine. Certainly in Germany, there's a very strong tradition in herbal medicine, much more so than here. In fact, a lot of the research that was carried out on herbal medicines was by Commission E in Germany, and they found the efficacy of a lot of herbs is undisputed. It's been done in solid proper research. There's been double blind placebo. And so it's quite it's good that resource is there for us, that we can say no, there is research to show this actually does something, it works, it has a physiological effect in the body. Because a lot of orthodox medics are very anti-complementary medicine. But then I would always say to them, well, look, here's some senna, swallow it, and I'll see you tomorrow.
He's a bit of a minx. So Martin, if somebody wants to come and see you, based on this, how are they best to get in touch with you? Have you got a Facebook page? Website?
Got a Facebook page, really easy to remember. It's Herbal Medicine Lincoln.
Any spaces?
No, I think it's all one word. Herbal Medicine Lincoln.
Yeah.
Certainly the website's it's herbalmedicinelincoln.com.
Yeah.
All one word. We've got, as I say, we're on Facebook as well, so you can get hold of me that way via the website, and all the contacts, details, phone numbers, etc. are all on there.
And the name of the practice is the Garden Clinic? The Garden Clinic,
yes.
And it's a great place to come, because you can also get a massage, not from Martin, but from Richard Hardy, who's also based here. And it's just a fantastic resource and a facility. And if you get the chance, in fact, just try something different, but do something different. Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always had. And your health is really, really important. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.